Humans have been preserving meat in sugar and honey for thousands of years, so today we're gonna try it with every type of meat. From whiskey bourbon brisket to agave syrup salmon to a lamb covered in jam, we'll find out if this technique deserves a place in modern cooking, it's like meat candy, or if it should be left in the past.
That is the worst I've ever eaten.
Let's get started. First step, let's check on these meaty contenders. We have a beautiful whole salmon, tomahawk, pork ribs, gotta have a brisket, lamb leg, beef rib, Thanksgiving turkey, and a loaf of bread.
Psych!
Ham. Tomahawk, pork ribs, gotta have a brisket, lamb leg, beef rib, Thanksgiving turkey, tomahawk, pork ribs, gotta have a brisket, lamb leg, beef rib, Thanksgiving turkey, whole salmon, ham, whole salmon, ham. First up, turkey. And we'll be curing it in an herb honey for 7 days. The combinations will get crazier and crazier, but I'll start by seasoning heavily before the soak to ensure some salt content to cut through all the sweetness. We've let our turkey dry brine for about 2 hours, so a lot of that salt has penetrated. It's time to add the honey. Honey has plenty of preservation properties, but especially complemented with herbs like rosemary and thyme, I'm hoping it'll lead to some great sweet flavor. Not gonna lie, this feels very wrong, but we are just completely covering the turkey in this herbaceous honey. Our turkey is fully submerged and bundled up. We'll be seeing him in 7 days. Next up, we have a tomahawk, and it is a thick boy. We'll be pairing it with something my dad used to eat by the spoonful, molasses. And again, we'll season it up ahead of time. So dark and thick, completely different than the rest of them. This stuff almost looks like black tar, but as it's less sweet tasting than honey, I'm hopeful the deep flavors will pair well with beef. And we'll see you in 7 days. Next up, we have beef short ribs, and this one's a little bit different. Unlike everything else we'll do today, this one is not being soaked in liquid, but we'll start by hitting it with salt and pepper. While the rest of these have been syrups, for the plate ribs, we're doing brown sugar. Starting with a layer down below, short ribs on, and we'll completely cover it up. Get on in there. I truly have no idea what the result of this one's gonna be, but either way, let's move on. We got lamb legs flying out of the sky, and it's about to get jammy. I got beans, greens, potatoes, tomatoes, chickens, turkeys, hams, lambs, jams. Starting by removing some of that silver skin and fat, just for better flavor penetration. Lamb fat can also be gamey, so I generally like to trim these quite well. And we'll season it up on all sides. Because it's lamb, we gotta go with jam. Start with a bottom layer. This one is a lot thicker than what we've been working with before. In with the lamb. This is very weirdly satisfying, almost soothing, you might say. And we'll be back in 7 days. Time for ham. This is going to be a truly hot honey baked ham. Speaking of hot honeys, hi Tibby. Tibby, God, oh, he just wants to.
He just wants snuggles.
Starting with honey, we'll add some Fresno peppers, some chili flakes, and debatably the spiciest pepper in the world, some fresh Carolina Reapers. Went a little too crazy with these in the last video, so only gonna add a bit of these. At least I think that's just a little bit. That looks deadly. Ham in the pot, or I guess vessel, honey on the ham. Ham is already cured, and I have no idea what happens when you double cure something, so this one should be very interesting. Jarring up the ham, moving on. This is significantly heavier than expected. Wow, where am I gonna put this thing? Ribs. Ribs and pork in general work super well with sweet rubs and glazes, but we may be going over the top with what's about to happen next. Not gonna lie, getting a little wacky with the flavor on this one. We're going with caramel, and I gotta take a swig. So thick, so good. Caramel, coming to stores near you. I have no idea what's in this stuff, but whatever they're doing with it, they're doing something right. You might be wondering why I'm adding caramel to ribs. Well, caramel apples are one of my favorite things, and you better believe we're smoking this with apple wood, so caramel feels like the perfect choice. We'll see these ribs in a week. Next up, we got brisket. Brisket is not something you generally see being sweet, so I went extra heavy with the salt on this one. And for this one, we have a flavor combination that I am super excited about. We'll start with maple syrup, next some bourbon, and a splash of vanilla extract. Beef, maple, and bourbon may just be the perfect flavor combination. And we'll completely cover the brisket until it is completely submerged. And we'll let it cure. For the one I am by far most excited about, we have a whole salmon. Ugh. Don't eat me!
Sorry, Charlie.
Cured then smoked salmon is extremely underrated, and I recently did a whole pastrami salmon, which was incredible, so hopes are high. And for this one, we're starting with agave. Never actually tried agave nectar. Super good. It's definitely sweet, but almost like floral. We'll add in some fresh orange juice, lemon juice, some lime juice, and finish with some fresh dill, which goes so good with salmon. And we'll add to the salmon. We'll finish with some slices of fresh citrus. We'll see him in 7 days. Well, guys, our 7 days are up. Let's crack her open. This thing already looks insane. I can tell it has really firmed up and it appears to have darkened up significantly. This is by far the craziest looking turkey I think I've ever seen. The skin and even the flesh appears extremely firm. It's almost bubbled up as if it's been dry brined for a really long period of time. Kind of reminds me of the dry aged turkey we did a long time ago. As long as it doesn't burn, I have high hopes it's gonna be super crispy by the end of it. I have a feeling that no matter what we do with it, it's gonna be extremely sweet, so I am gonna wipe off as much of the honey as I possibly can. At this point, it is fully penetrated. Next, we'll just hit it with a little oil binder to help the additional seasoning stick and also improve the crispiness. And we'll season one more time to hopefully counteract some of that sweetness. And into the oven to roast. And just like that, our turkey is done, and she is looking beautiful. It's definitely very caramelized, but certainly not burnt. We'll just break it down, and the breast still looks packed with flavor, and the skin kind of looks like crispy duck. I think we can all agree this is a beautiful looking turkey.
That skin is looking so good.
I like turkey more than chicken.
Cheers.
Whoa.
I'm liking it.
It's not as sweet as I would have thought. Like, I thought this thing was gonna be waterlogged with just sugar, syrup.
Pleasantly sweet, almost like a cured turkey deli meat.
The interior is amazing, and I think that the soaking gave it almost extra moisture.
I kind of feel like the skin's almost like pork belly skin. It's not extremely crispy, like you can definitely bite through it, and the flavor is just insane.
Honestly, I think I would prefer this over regular turkey.
Better than normal roasted turkey, not as good as deep fried. Deep fried is super good.
It is debatably not worth completely covering it in honey. Not to mention, I did not taste the herbs whatsoever. But regardless, would you guys agree that this thing does soak?
Yep, it soaks.
Time to check on that molasses tomahawk. And let's see what we got. Color on this is just insane. Now we'll remove as much of this stuff as possible. It is just super thick. The steak itself is so firm, it weirdly feels like it's also been dry aged or like dry brined. We'll hit this with just a little more seasoning. It is a super thick steak. And onto the grill. And we'll reverse sear until 120 Fahrenheit internal. Followed by a quick and hot sear, flipping frequently to caramelize, but avoid burning. Hard to tell if I did in fact burn this, or if I'm looking at the most amazing crust of all time, but I removed the bone and took some slices, and this thing looks like the perfect medium rare. Whoa, this rib cap is looking ridiculous.
Holy sh**.
This might be the juiciest rib cap I've ever seen in my life. Whoa.
Wow.
That's crazy. I feel like I'm eating a super powerful burnt end right now.
Yes, especially the cap. And also, can we just emphasize how juicy that cap got?
It reminds me of a really nicely marinated steak tip. It's not that bitter molasses flavor that you might be used to when you just take a spoonful of it. Our dad used to do this when we were growing up.
Still does.
He'd just take a whole spoon and eat it and be like, do you want some?
This is amazing. It doesn't taste like molasses.
And I feel like that sugar on the outside allowed the smoke from the grill to get soaked up by the steak.
And the caramelization is just off the charts.
I honestly want to try molasses now on other meats like skirt steak, flank steak, something like that.
It soaks.
Definitely soaks. It's like how to make low and slow barbecue without actually going low and slow.
Go fast and last.
Time to check on our beef short rib, buried treasure.
I got a jar of dirt, I got a jar of dirt, and guess what's inside it?
And right off the bat, I can see there's a ton of moisture that's kind of risen to the top. And all that sugar down below kind of looks waterlogged. Let's see what we got. Wow, weirdly, it's like right above the meat, the sugar's turned white. Still brown on the exterior, but the shell covering it is now just white sugar. This one's just completely different than all the other ones we've done today. It is completely dry, almost more like it's been dry aged. Like it sort of has a pellicle to it. It definitely seems very thin as well. Gonna hit this with a little oil binder, and because of that intense sugar content, I'm gonna dust it with a little more seasoning. And onto the grill to smoke. And this is the result. Let them rest for about an hour, and I have to say it looks perfect. Went with no wrap, but still the bark is looking amazing. Zero burning, which I was a little worried about. And we'll give them a slice. Ooh, super tender. Oh, we got a squirter.
It's kind of giving me ham texture.
It almost became like a pastrami pull apart texture, more fibrous. It might be a little bit too rich adding that into plate ribs because they're already so rich on their own.
Flavor-wise, I really enjoy it, and I really don't hate the texture either.
I think I prefer this over a regular set of plate ribs. Usually it's just so fatty, and for some reason that cured aspect of it is cutting down on that super fattiness. And can we just do a little rewind? Now we what was going on with the sugar?
Well, brown sugar is white sugar plus molasses, right? It took the molasses out of it.
It robbed the sugar of its molasses.
I think I would prefer this to a normal one. Or does it berry?
I think it varies.
It berries.
Next up, it is time for our lamb jam lamb, and I have no idea what to expect with this one. Let's see what we got here. Whoa, you can already tell the lamb is looking purple. Ugh. Slimy lamb. Smells stupendous. So normally I would remove all the excess on here, but I have a feeling that raspberry jam on a lamb leg is just gonna be phenomenal. So we're gonna leave it on and kind of use it as a binder. Hopes are very high with this one. Let's get it on the smoker. And after 3.5 hours over applewood, this is what she's looking like. And we'll take some nice thin slices. Without even tasting it yet, it definitely feels more firm, like it's been cured, but it still has a good amount of moisture and seems tender.
It's time for a lamb jam.
Yes.
What am I tasting?
Almost like an elevated pastrami or something. The jam, it really penetrated. It took out all the gaminess. It's tender. It's amazing.
And that little bit of sweetness with it, and the texture is so good.
That's what I think I'm shocked at most, is none of these things actually taste overly sweet.
Practically using all that jam is not necessary, but like throw it in a bag, essentially marinate it in jam, and you're gonna have a good time.
Could you use like grape juice or something like that instead to make it way more practical?
I think I speak for all of us when I say that jam on lamb most certainly soaks.
It has been 7 days. Let's check on that hot honey ham. I have to say, this one looks exactly like it did before soaking in the honey, but we'll have to see how it tastes. Remove some of that excess honey. Hit it with a slightly spicy barbecue rub. Ham is already salty, and we clearly added enough sweetness. This is just for a little extra flavor and color. And onto the smoker it goes. It reached 145 Fahrenheit, and our ham is done. The exterior looks a bit dry, but either way, I'm just gonna take some slices.
Hot honey soaked honey baked ham.
Dang.
Love it.
It's really good, but it's weird because we're essentially curing cured meat.
It's not spicy.
Not spicy at all.
We use a lot of those Carolina Reapers too.
Ham already kind of has like a shell almost. Probably couldn't penetrate that.
Yeah. It tastes amazing, but ham on its own tastes amazing.
Cure almost draws out some of the moisture from the shell. It's almost like ham jerky or something. It gets really dry.
Speaking of jerky, if you are interested in supporting the channel, head on over to maxjerky.com. Your support is the reason we're able able to do fun videos just like this. We have some absolutely incredible flavors. I promise you, it is the best jerky in the world, and we appreciate the support. I think hams, soaking it doesn't help the ham.
I kind of agree. I don't think the soaking helped it.
I kind of like this the best. Aside from the lamb, I like it that
Have you ever had a dream where...
Sophia, we are overriding you on this one because it's 2-1. We are deciding that ham does not soak.
And next up, let's check on these pork ribs. Still smells amazing. Drain off some of that caramel and place it onto a rack. Once again, wiping off as much of that exterior sugar as possible. You can see how it has that really crazy deep red cured look underneath. It almost has the same color as like a hamon leg or something. Now I'll hit this with a low sugar but slightly spicy barbecue rub, just for a little kick to counteract some of that sweetness. And time to find out if these things completely burn to a crisp. Let's get it on the grill. But after 5 hours, I am shocked by how good these bad boys look. And our ribs are done. They look like they've been glazed to perfection, maybe slightly less tender than a traditional rib, but they definitely still seem juicy. I mean, if this isn't a good looking rib, I really don't know what is. Ribs,
And we're gloving up for this one. How many times do we have to
teach you this lesson, old man.
It's like a candied rib. I'm getting a little bit of the caramel, but it's mostly just like a glazed, tacky candy rib situation.
I really like this. It's got a way bigger bite to it. It's so much different than a normal rib. It's not fall off the bone.
I think my problem with cured foods is it usually tastes too cured, but this has the texture of it while just having a subtle cured flavor.
I almost compare it to like a dry aged steak versus a non-dry aged steak. Like in some situations, I would prefer one to the other. It's almost like a dessert rib.
Yeah.
It's like meat candy. Does it soak?
It's so
Definitely soaks.
Moving on.
I'm soaked.
And we have finally made it to the brisket. Covered in that maple bourbon glaze, it is looking pretty crazy. And just take a look at how the fat and marbling has reacted. It's like so pronounced with that deep red color. It is also significantly more firm. Now we're just gonna wipe it down like we've done before, and we'll give it a nice dusting of seasoning and get it on the grill. And just like that, 14 hours of cooking and a 2-hour rest is up, and our brisket is done. It has this amazing glazed, almost shiny appearance, and that bark is barking. Oh! Let's slice her up. Is it juicy? Yes, it is. But slicing into it, I can tell something's not quite right. It has an almost shreddable texture. The caramelization and bark on the sides is so intense that it's almost difficult to slice, but it still appears super juicy and extremely tender. Cheers.
That octave was so low.
Brisket.
It was my alter ego.
Some things are just so good in their original form. Crust is kind of sweeter and like more thick, but I feel like texturally and flavor-wise, it just doesn't quite compare.
I do think it cuts the richness, again, similar to that short rib, but I don't love the texture as much.
I love the bark, really caramelized. However, I think it made it too soft. It's a good contrast, but I wouldn't say the interior is better than a normal brisket.
I don't really taste the bourbon. I definitely don't taste the vanilla. Like it's been cooked so long. It also feels a little less smoky than you'd expect from a smoked brisket. We will still be enjoying this brisket for the next few days, but what this all means is that unfortunately, brisket does not soak.
I have no idea what to expect with this one, but it's been 7 days and our salmon is ready. Whole bagged salmon covered in agave. Not something you see every day. Now we're gonna try to remove this salmon. Something tells me this might get messy. That's a shoulder workout right there. Okay. Whoa. And this is what we are left with. It is completely different than when it was fresh. The skin is now super leathery, almost like scaly. Such a weird texture. But the inside has a beautiful color to it, and it looks really well seasoned. And we'll fillet it up. Carefully working my knife to follow the backbone, removing a whole side of this beautiful salmon. And it's definitely firmed up a bit. Now we'll just very simply remove the skin, gently peeling it off, letting the knife do the work. And we'll cut ourselves a nice steak. It's just some absolutely stunning looking salmon. Even Tibby's ready. not for you. Also gonna cook these salmon collars. I feel like they're gonna char up so nicely. They are just packed with the most rich and fatty meat. And we'll just hit it with a standard barbecue rub. And we'll get it on the grill. And just like that, our smoked salmon is done. Doesn't seem to have picked up as much color as I would have liked, but it is certainly still juicy and very tender. I give you guys the least convenient and messiest way to prepare a salmon in the history of the world.
That is terrible.
I don't like it.
I don't like it either. There's a rotten.
The sugar would have
Oh.
absorbed nicely and it
Terrible
just...
aftertaste. That's
Kind
so
of
bad.
Kind of an oaky afterbirth.
Kind of sort of an oaky afterbirth.
That's terrible. That is the worst salmon I've ever eaten.
It's like really soft.
I'm actually feeling kind of.
Why is it so bad?
I thought it would tack up the way those ribs did, but it's just soggy and mushy and fishy.
This is not that different than making like gravlax.
Hot smoked salmon.
Yeah, it's not that different, but somehow this tastes way worse.
Salmon for sure does not soak. That was a tough one to end on, but either way, really hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to check out maxjerky.com to support the channel, and we'll see you next time.